gonna be ugly. Well, you're here. Touche. So, shots fired. Oh, anybody joining us?
What's funny is Pastor Ben just started and he goes, like, don't do anything.
Like, why would you say that? Like, why would you say that now that you're live on the Facebook?
Or as Pastor Todd used to say, the face plant.
The face plant.
Yeah.
You know, I've always heard it said that if you put the, when you start putting the in front of things where it doesn't belong, you're too old for that thing. Whatever it is, you're too old for it when you start putting the in front of it.
I heard that we're going to be in the book of Habakkuk.
Is that in the Bible? It is in the Bible.
The Bible.
Welcome for all those of you joining us. We will not be able to see your comments this week because the phone's turned around the other way because the camera's wider. But I believe...
Hindsight, I should have just gotten my computer.
No, the camera is literally using hindsight. So that's a good point. But I believe somebody else will be on there to respond to your comments. It's going to be our Friday series. Or YouTube channel if you... I hope many of you got the opportunity to share in the bread and cup together with your family or even on your own to remember what Christ did for us. But our time is, we're going to try to be respectful of everyone's time. This will probably be a slightly longer segment than normal, and that's kind of by design. But we're starting a new series called Why Me? A Prophet's Perspective. And I didn't think I was going to say this, but I think I'm going to say this. Part of the reason I felt like... We're live right now. Okay. Part of the reason I felt like this was a good series to go through is because depending on your situation, you might feel like this is pretty rough.
Yeah, it's different.
And I don't in any way want to minimize that because I know that there are some people going through all kind of hardship. Financial hardship, some people are losing loved ones, etc. And there's a reality that pretty much every prophet in the Bible had it worse.
Yeah, and they have something to say about, like it might not look like God's working, but He is.
Yeah, I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah,
in preparation for this.
I think so.
So let's dig in. We're going to be in Habakkuk chapter 1. We're going to spend 3 weeks going through Habakkuk because there's 3 chapters. And
we're going to keep this going where you're going to say Habakkuk and I'm going to say
Habakkuk?
Habakkuk.
Habakkuk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tomato, tomato.
Tomato, tomato.
Okay.
All right, shall we read it? I'm going to read it.
All right. Habakkuk chapter 1.
Even if he doesn't like it, I'm going to read it. Chapter 1, verse 1, the oracle that Habakkuk, the prophet, saw. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not hear, or cry to you violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see iniquity, and why do you look idly at wrong? Destruction and violence are before me, strife and contention arise. So the law is paralyzed, and justice never goes forth. For the wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. The Lord answers. Look among the nations and see. Wonder and be astounded, for I am doing a work in your days that you would not believe if told. For behold, I am raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation, who march through the breadth of the earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than the evening wolves. Their horsemen press proudly on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle swift to devour. They all come for violence, all their faces forward. They gather captives like sand. At kings they scoff, and at rulers they laugh. They laugh at every fortress, for they pile up earth and take it. Then they sweep by like the wind and go on. Guilty men, whose own might is their God. Habakkuk goes on. Are you not? Wait, does he put this in the next section? Mm-hmm. Do this one?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to do this one. Starting verse 12.
Worst case scenario, we don't get to it, but yeah.
No, we might not get to it. Are you not from everlasting, O Lord my God, my Holy One? We shall not die. O Lord, you have ordained them as a judgment, and you, O Rock, have established them for reproof. You who are of purer eyes than to see evil and cannot look at wrong. Why do you idly look at traitors and are silent when the wicked swallows up the man more righteous than he? You make mankind like the fish of the sea, like crawling things that have no ruler. He brings all of them up with a hook. He drags them out with his net. He gathers them in his drag net, so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net and makes offering to his drag net, for by them he lives in luxury and his food is rich. Is he then to keep emptying his net and mercilessly killing nations forever? I will take my stand at my watchpost and station myself on the tower and look out to see what he will say to me and what I will answer according to my complaint. At least he knows he was complaining. So that was a little long, more scripture than we typically read on these, but it's different. So, Pastor Matt, what do you see in chapter 1?
What do I see in chapter 1? I see something that I oftentimes do, probably more so in the car when I'm alone, and that's yell at God. And the reality is, what I see in chapter 1 is every single time I see, like, Habakkuk is one of my favorite books, because it's like every time I yell at God, he always answers me back, and and it's just as loud, if not louder. So it's encouraging that the guy long ago who did the same thing I do in my car.
I don't think he had a car.
I don't think he had a car. But
He had a watch post on the tower.
yeah,
That was his car.
that's it. Yeah, that's what I see in chapter 1. All right, chapter 2. No.
No, we only got time for chapter 1. So that's all. No, just kidding. That's not all. There is this tone in Habakkuk's words. I'm going to do that every time now.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
No problem.
There's this tone in his words that is, can we say, kind of accusatory towards God?
Yeah. I mean, I think that we all struggle with that same thing oftentimes, because we get caught up in all of our circumstances, and it just seems overwhelming, and this is why I don't watch the news, like almost zero. Like I tapped on just to see what the governor had to say yesterday, and then that was the amount of news that I watched.
This is why I never knows what's going on.
But the thing is, if you're nonstop tapping into news sources, that's a heavy weight to carry. And I got to be honest with you, I got enough weight to carry. I don't need any more. So
well, he said it. No, that's true though, because what you are taking in shapes your perspective. And I don't want to skip ahead to chapter 3, but there's such a lesson and tone of perspective in this book. And we see here at the beginning, his perspective is small, it's limited. He says, he looks at the current situation and says, the wicked prosper, and God, you're not doing anything about it. And God says, you think this is bad? Just wait.
Well, when I break down the chapter for this first part, my takeaway is always that God is, he's completely aware of our needs, and he'll take care of it when he deems fit. Like but we're so impatient. And we get so bombarded that we think that he doesn't even care what's going on.
Yeah,
So
which is, can we simplify it? I didn't get what I want, so God must not care about me.
yeah.
And oh man, what there's
Well, don't you see that just in the first 4 verses? When Habakkuk starts unloading his misconceptions.
Yeah, it's almost a shaking of the fist at God, saying, I'm crying for help here, and I'm trying to alert you to a problem. Like God doesn't know that there's violence. Like God doesn't know there's injustice and inequality. He's, I'm trying to do my part here, and you're not doing your part.
Yeah.
Boy, it sounds bad when you say it out loud like that.
I've been guilty of the same thing.
So is it fair to say Habakkuk was Habakkuk? That's it. I do it every time.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say he was having a bad day? How do you know you're having a bad day, Matt? Matt's got a whole list. Pastor Matt has a whole list of things here of when you know it's going to be a bad day.
You call suicide prevention and they put you on hold.
It's a bad day.
Yeah. You turn on the news and they're showing emergency routes out of the city. Your income check bounces, or in today's your stimulus check.
Yeah.
Bounces.
Your stimmy doesn't come in.
Yeah, that's or your wife says, "Good morning, Bill," and your name is George. That's just you're gonna have a bad day. I have a lot of them, and this is what's really funny to me is that I'm trying to keep things light these days, especially with my family, and so I make sure to send out a daily dad joke, and my son's
Son's gotta be loving those.
Yeah, and I said to my wife the other day, I says, you don't like humor? And she goes, you're just not funny.
You're just not funny. How you know it's gonna be a bad day?
Yeah.
Oh man. So here's you got. We're working a little bit off of some notes that Pastor Matt put together here, and so I'm gonna ask him some questions as though he didn't already write the questions. With saw my situation, he'd do something about it.
Well, especially those of us who have been in a marriage, the wife's frustration oftentimes is that we're not listening. So it's
I'm sorry. What? Oh.
That's how Habakkuk opens up. It's like, God, you're not even listening to me. Yeah, that's not a true statement. And a few verses in, he's like, it's not. You're not even being fair, and maybe even a little bit vindictive.
Yeah, God's not fair, or he's out to get me. Yeah. As if God being out to get you wasn't fair. I think that's actually.
Well, and I love in the second part of verse 3, he says, "Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists, contention arises." Like, God, I know you're like busy up in heaven and all, but let me inform you as to what's happening down here because you are unaware.
Yeah. That actually, when you say that, because that actually fits some people's view of God. That God is, maybe He created everything, maybe He is all powerful, but He doesn't care enough to actually be involved in or really even pay attention to everything that's going on. Like some stuff gets by Him.
Yeah.
Because and it gets by Him because He lets it by Him and He doesn't really care. But that's a misconception about God. There's something else in this section. Would you say that Habakkuk is blaming God?
Yeah.
Okay. Trying to tee that one up for you.
Yeah.
But at
the end of the day, we do it all the time, right? We make personal choices, we make life choices, and then we oftentimes blame somebody else or try to justify it. It happens ever since that first book way back here in Genesis, where man sins, brings sin in, and he says, it was the woman that made me do it.
That you gave me.
That you gave me. It's your fault, God.
Oh,
we love to blame Him for.
Yeah. Well, it's right here in verse 4. He says, the law is paralyzed and justice never goes forth. Well, who's responsible for meting out justice on a national scale?
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
The wicked surround the righteous, so justice goes forth perverted. Boy, that's no wonder God answered him back.
Well, he ends there in verse 4 and just blames God for just sitting there idle and not doing anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said earlier, like we get so lost in everything that surrounds us and get bombarded with stress and all this information that we just lose sight of what God's actually doing. And so that was the thing, like me conversing with God in the car loudly. He's always like that's one of the reasons I love Habakkuk is that he always answers back.
Yeah.
And it always puts you in a humbling place because it's like, hey, you're
Well, I love, and I know I'm skipping ahead, but for time's sake, we want to get through this. But in God's answer, his answer to, Habakkuk raises the, I got it right that time. Habakkuk raises this complaint that like wicked people are prospering and the righteous are suffering. And God alerts him to, oh, I'm not only at work, I'm at work to judge these people, including yourself, that you're calling righteous.
Yeah.
I'm actually not done dealing with them, and I'm going to use this wicked nation to teach them something. I'm going to use this wicked nation to judge this righteous nation that you're referring to. So this whole idea that justice is going about perverted, yeah. I'm going to fix that, but not in the direction you think. I do love how God does that. It's like, oh, you think it's bad. You think it's bad now. It's going to get worse. This whole next section on God's answers, that God is not only aware, he planned it. He planned my situation. That, on the surface, it sounds discomforting. But how do you find comfort in that?
Well,
there's bad things happening
what
to
you
me.
just said, if you take a little snippet, like God planned your situation. It's one of those, so he's the one that planned all of this nonsense. And I think a better way to say it is, oftentimes God plans for it.
Yeah.
That we have a tendency of messing things up, and he always knows what's around the corner. Mm-hmm. And it's not a shock to him that he's already worked it out for his good and his glory.
Yeah.
Even though we can't see it.
This does get into the sovereignty of God part. But so, like, if even the bad things, I don't even think that needs scare quotes. Bad things, even if the bad things in our lives are the things that we deem as uncomfortable or not enjoyable, but difficult times, can we say trials in our lives, are in fact not only allowed but ordained by God. Yeah. How do we find comfort in that?
I don't know. James chapter 1, verse 2 says, we can count it all joy.
Count it all joy.
Count it all joy. When we go through those things, and we actually had that conversation last night in our Bible study. Is
that the same as saying to someone who's having a rough time, just telling them to stop it? Stop it. A little bit. A little bit. Yeah. The Bible is not always gentle. Let's be clear on that. But it is clear.
And I like all in these verses. Like God is aware of the character of the enemy. God's aware of all of the things that they have at their disposal, whether it's weaponry or skills. Like God's aware of it, and the reality is that we can. There's purpose behind it. That's the same thing that you're saying, like that we learn in James chapter 1 and the following verses. Like God does bring us through hard things like this, but there's always a plan, and our job oftentimes is to sit back, shut up, and watch God work. Sometimes he'll use you. Sometimes sit back, shut up, and watch God work.
Can we say that? No, I think God told Job that, so I think we can say that. Live. You're live. Yeah. Well, I, to answer my own question too, I do find comfort in the God ordained this situation because if you have a proper theology about God and you say theology and some people glaze over, but the reality is there's a very practical side to the theology side, because your theology shapes your thinking, which shapes your perspective, and if your theology of God includes that he is sovereign and that nothing in your life happens without his approval and his plan, then that can give me a different perspective on my trials. I can look at the difficult season in my life, and instead of just praying for it to be over as soon as possible, I can pray that God will teach me what he wants to teach me, because clearly he wants me to grow in this situation. And so if I just pray for it to be over, I don't grow. No. But if I pray for the lesson, I can see God's hands working.
Hey, can we get to more whining?
Right, we can move on to more whining. You do like this part.
It really shows the character of this individual crying out to God. It's just like
and it's not like Job, where like Job cries out to God, God answers him with like a punch in the face, and Job comes back like, wow, you know what, God, you are so right. No, Habakkuk comes back with more whining. So yeah.
At verse 12, I love it.
So how would,
Are you not from everlasting like you're going? You're. May I remind you that you are the everlasting judge? Just in case you didn't know who you were, God,
Yeah.
creator of the universe, judge of all.
yeah.
Let me just tell you who you are.
Or verse 13, why do you look idly at traitors? Oh, you're going to use the bad guys to punish the good guys? Well, then you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
You're gonna talk to the righteous judge and tell him how he's judging wrong. Maybe God's interpreting the law wrong. Maybe.
Do you think Habakkuk has the same problem we do, and think that we can do a better job?
Oh, I would never have that
God.
problem.
Oh, you would never like.
No, that is such a. To reference a movie with probably really bad theology, probably nothing bad theology, but like that Bruce Almighty movie. The only piece of good theology from that movie is that lesson right there. Morgan Freeman as God is mopping the building, and that's his version of cleaning up the world. Granted, that's not good theology, but the part that's good is the Bruce guy, Jim Carrey's character, thought he could do a better job, and God was like, "Okay, take a crack at it," and everything was a mess, and the whole point in the end was, you know what, you got this.
And that's why I don't watch the news, because everybody thinks that they can do the job better than the person.
Oh, I thought you were going to say because there's such great movies like Bruce
No,
Almighty.
no.
Okay, so if you were to kind of start to land the plane here, and obviously the plane isn't totally landed because we got 2 more chapters to go, which means 2 more weeks. This will be a Friday special. But how would you sum up this last section in kind of one sentence that Habakkuk says?
Where are we at?
I'm trying to tee you up to read this part.
Oh, the second misconception, or the second truth?
Misconception number 2. Here, you can read it now.
It needs to be far away, and I need glasses
Oh,
these days.
here.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'm gonna hold it further out of frame.
Misconception: God needs to respond to my situation how and when I need Him to.
I like that summary. Pastor Matt came up with that. I had to remind him that he came up with that so that he could read it. But that is such a good. Yeah, that's so often our perspective too. He whines back to God, and then it's like, well, you answered me last time, so surely you'll answer me this time. And he feels like he made some really good points that now God's going to have to reevaluate his plan. He goes, I'll stand here and wait for your answer.
I love it. And then we should probably end and keep chapter 2 for next week. Keep it in order, right?
Yeah,
right.
We probably should.
But I love this. I have a little different version than yours, but I will stand on my guard post and watch, station myself on the rampart. I will keep watch to see what he will speak to me and how I may reply when I'm reproved. How often do we do that? That we can ask somebody, or we're in a conversation with somebody, and we're the only, while they're blah 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 blah, we're thinking of how we're going to respond. We're not listening. I was actually on a go-to meeting with a number of pastors and ministry leaders the other day with our fellowship, and I heard our chaplain, I think it was Jeremy Feaster, was saying how often, like as pastors, chaplains, that we need to learn how to listen. That we can't, especially with people that are hurting right now and going through hard times. Sometimes people just want to share their burden. They don't want you to respond. They just want you to listen. And it's too often we're listening to people vent and share, what's happening in their life, and we're thinking how we can counsel them at the end of whatever they're getting done saying.
Wait, was this pastoral advice or marriage advice?
This was all.
Oh, this goes both ways. How many of us have been in that situation, or
yeah, it's
don't need you to fix me.
I'm just saying this. The lesson that I learned in those first couple, or this first verse in chapter 2, right before chapter 2 says, "Then the Lord answered," is that there's this admittance from Habakkuk that he's going to listen to God speak, but he's going to think how he's going to respond.
Yeah.
And too often we do that, and we need to be reminded that when God's talking, shut up and
Yeah.
listen. That was probably when it comes to the context of prayer, there's been two people who have influenced that greatly in my life. Pastor Bruce Linhart at Highlands Community and Pastor Randy, exchanging my broken perspective for God's divine will. But Pastor Bruce said, oftentimes in prayer, the best thing you can do is shut up. Just don't talk.
Yeah.
And so it's been really cool. So I like that takeaway that I get from Habakkuk of just don't prepare your response. Listen to God, like He's God. He's God of the universe. Like He got this.
He got this.
He's
He's from Imam Park. You'll have to forgive him. So a quick recap as we recap chapter 1 and we'll close this out. This is a lot longer than we normally go, but that was the plan.
Yeah.
So recap. Misconception number 1.
Misconception number 1: God isn't in tune with my situation. But the truth is,
God is not only aware, He planned my situation.
and then the second misconception, before we learn next week the truth, is God needs to respond to my situation how and when I need Him to. Next week, then the Lord answered.
Oh, I thought you needed me to turn the page for you.
Hey, can
No.
I pray for us?
I think we should pray.
Yeah. Lord, I pray that you use this time that we get to just converse about the power of your word. I pray that it transforms our lives, our hearts, especially in a time where it seems that there's a whole lot of relativity out there. But I pray that when we are in tune with you, that we have the absolute truth and the power of the gospel, that we can relay truth to people, that God is love and God is mercy, and God is sovereign. He's in control. He knows about our problems. He's aware of them, and He is there to lift us up and to bear those burdens with us and for us. Lord, I thank you just for the time that we can spend reading through, conversing about your word, and I thank you just for the opportunity to minister in this way to those who are tapping into these daily devotions. And Lord, transform us, renew us, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Pastor Matt, thanks for your time.
You know what? It was fun, and it was real.
But
And
was
you know
it
what?
real fun?
It was real
It
fun.
was real fun. It's some of the only human interaction we
I
get
think
all
we can
weekend.
just walk away now, right?
I think so. Thanks for joining us on here, and we'll see you again next week.